the world. So tonight we're gonna be discussing about rice pests. With us today is very special guest speaker. It's very special panel. Dr. Rapindra Joshi from the Philippines Rice Research Institute. Dr. Rafi Joshi is my friend, my mentor, and yeah, I learned a lot from him. And Dr. Joshi will be talking about ecological management of invasive rice pests from selected example from the Philippines. So before we're listening to his presentation, so I would like to introduce Dr. Rafi Joshi. Dr. Rafi Joshi was born in India on 26 September 1958. He did his bachelor degree in agriculture at the Andhra Pradesh Agricultural University in India. He did his master degree in agricultural entomology from the Tamil Nadu Agricultural University, also in India, and he did his PhD at the University Philippines Los Baños in entomology. He has very fast experience, more than 25 years experience working on agricultural sectors. He is an independent consultant and also a scientist, professor, and he had been working in many institutions, like he is a senior consultant in the Philippines Rice Research Institute. He's also a consultant at Southeast Asia Kabi Regional Center in Malaysia, and also senior advisor on invasive apple projects funded by European Union. There are so many activities and expertise that Dr. Rafi Joshi is doing. And as I know that Dr. Rafi Joshi also is a leading promoter of system rice intensification. He promoted the SRI in the Solomon Island impact. He is a senior advisor to the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock in Solomon Island. And yeah, I think he doesn't need to be introduced because he's very famous all around the world. Are you ready, Dr. Rafi Joshi?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Rafi, yeah. Okay. Before we start the presentations, please, all the participants, mute your mic. And should you have the questions, please write on the chat box. If you have a question during this presentation, you can just drop your question on in the chat box. Later on, after the presentation, Dr. Rafi Joshi will be answering all of your questions. All right, Dr. Rafi Joshi, the platform is yours.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. And before I make a presentation, first of all, I'd like to thank the chairman of SRI MAS, Dr. Elisa Azure Azaman, and of course, to my very good friend, Dr. Febri Doni. We've been working together for many years, and we believe in the same thing. So we promote, SRI not only in Philippines, but also in other countries, including in the Pacific Island countries. And it was because of Dr. Norman Uphoff that we invited him to Solomon Islands, and he was very kind enough to come there from such a long way to the Solomon Islands, just because the Solomon Island government was very keen with SRI. And SRI is an approved policy by the cabinet of the Solomon Island government. So today's presentation, first of all, let me share my presentation, and then I will briefly go into it. Is it clear? Can you see my screen?
Yes, all good,
Yes,
all
yes,
good.
we can see
Oh,
your
excellent,
screen.
excellent. So what I'm going to present today is actually been working for almost more than 30 years because as Dr. Fabry mentioned that I'm an entomologist. So my main focus is always has been on the ecology-based solution to pest management. So today I would share actually many years of experience, but basically with few selected examples from the Philippines. So currently I'm a senior consultant at the Philippine Rice Research Institute in the Philippines, which is under the Department of Agriculture. And I'm a foreigner in the Philippines, but fortunate to work with the government of the Philippines for many years. And I'm also currently the mentor with the Merle William Fellowship Program of Australia, because I have been doing a lot of projects also on management of rice pest through the Australian Centre for International Agriculture Research. So to briefly mention what field rice is all about, it's a government entity which is attached to the Department of Agriculture. And I am a consultant currently with the Field Rice Crop Protection Division. So here, my focus and the institute focus is we need to develop sustainable pest management strategies because we want to improve farmers' pest management decisions. And all the technologies or strategies that we focus is on agroecology, ecosystem based, because we consider ecological biodiversity. And of course, any management options that we develop should be environmentally friendly, safe, economical, sustainable, and compatible with other management options. So Merle William Fellowship Program, I think many of you will be interested. This is a new program which has started for the last 2 years. And now the second cohort people are already there. But basically this program, I'm a mentor in both the cohort 1 and cohort 2 because of my work in many countries looking more on the ecology based management. So this is a very unique opportunity for women agricultural researchers across the Indo-Pacific region they only select women researchers because they want to develop women empowerment in agricultural sciences. So the structure of my presentation is going to be very simple because I think we have a diverse group. So I'm going to go with a very simple and then later go into the details of it. So I will describe what are invasive alien species and what categories do they belong to. What are the impacts of invasive alien species on UN sustainable goals? And how do they influence or become more problematic with climate? So after that, I'll go into the rice production systems and deal with only few selected invasive species that I have been working for many years and still continue to work on some of them to further reduce the use of pesticides. And of course, the introduction to the ecological engineering. It sounds a very, very difficult term, but it is basically, it's been there for a long time. And then, of course, I'll share some experiences from the Philippine Rice Research Institute, and then the take-home message. Alien species are actually both belongs to plant and animal and microbes. They are introduced from new regions into the new regions, mainly through the human activities. And whenever the invasive species comes in, it negatively impacts not only ecosystem services, but also the threatened biodiversity, food security, and human health. Therefore, they have a direct and indirect impacts on economic growth and livelihood. So invasive species actually are either introduced deliberately, and there are some examples that I'm going to show you here. If you look on the right-hand side at the bottom, is a snail which has been introduced to almost most of the Asian countries, and now currently it has invaded Kenya. So I'm currently a consultant to CABI in Kenya on how to manage these snails before it spread to other parts of Eastern Africa. Similarly, if you look at the on the top on left hand side, it's a beautiful flower. It's a lantana. It's a weed, and now it was introduced because it was an ornamental plant. So similarly, either the invasive species are introduced deliberately or by accident. They are introduced by accident, just like many of the invasive plants as well as other pest organisms. So many of these invasive species, as I mentioned to you, they affect ecosystems, services, as well as biodiversity. So what's the problem? What are the main characteristics of invasive species? Because they become invasive because they have very few natural enemies or predators or parasites or diseases that affects them in the new environment. And secondly, they have high reproductive rates. They multiply very fast, very fast. They produce large number of population in a short period of time. And third, they are long-lived. And fourth, they feed on many kinds of plants. So they become very invasive. And of course, one of the characteristics that invasives are, that's why they're becoming very problematic in climate change, in changing climate, is because of their ability to withstand a wide range of environmental conditions. And of course, the basic point is because they multiply very fast. So if you look at the invasive species, they are second important to habitat degradation and loss, with approximately around 50% affecting biodiversity. So they are the second biggest threat to the global biodiversity. And that's why the role of invasive species management is at a very high level at the UN Sustainable Goals. So what are the impacts? The impacts are both on economic and environmental cost. It's very high. And I want to give you an estimate. There are around 1.2 million invasive species in the world, and they are causing a loss of around 1.4 trillion US dollar annually, which is actually, if you look at 1.4 trillion US dollar, is approximately 5% of the annual global GDP. So it's a huge one. Currently, all countries, including Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, and Vietnam, they're all being heavily, there's a global invasion of the fall armyworm in corn. This is one of the serious problems. Actually, it started in Africa. So we are currently working extensively on looking at fall armyworm problem, not on corn, but on rice, because it is now also moving into rice. So if you look at in the 12 African countries which are growing maize, it is causing around 2.5 billion to 6.2 billion a year that is lost from this particular individual pest. So the FAO has a special program, and Indonesia is also involved, and I'm currently also helping on the management of the fall armyworm. So the losses from invasive alien species are even more than what you get from a natural disaster like tsunami or even volcanic eruptions. So, and this invasive species are actually affecting the food insecurity of roughly 66% of the 7 billion people around the world. So why invasive species are on the top of agenda of sustainable development goals? Because they affect many of the UN sustainable goals, from SDG 1, 2, 3, and there's a special, there's a dedicated SDG, which is number 15, which targeted to prevent the introduction and significantly reduce the impact of invasive alien species. That is why, the invasive alien species, and also even in terms of agroecology, now we are using a lot of agroecological principles to manage invasive species, because those approaches are very sustainable, And also at the same time, we are able to reduce the external input. Today's presentation, I will also give you some examples where you can use zero application of pesticide and you still are the farmers are safe and can manage those invasive pests without a single application of insecticides or pesticides. So why invasive species and climate change is a big problem? You know, all of us know that the earth is getting warmer, and you can expect ecosystem changes because in terms of the shifts in plant and animal distribution, and this is going to favor the spread and establishment of invasive species, because most of the invasive species, as I mentioned to you before, they are very high reproductive, and at the same time, they have high level of plasticity. So coming to the global rice production, you know, it's as our moderator mentioned a while ago, rice is a very important staple food, and it is for around 2 billion people in the world. And of course, the higher yields are needed because of the global increase in rice demand of around 26% in the next 25 years because of the increase in human population. So what's the problem here? The problem is that in most countries, because people want to produce more, so they are undergoing intensification, but involved, and you know, they are simplifying the landscape ecology. As a result, they are increasing the inputs of fertilizers and pesticides. This is a serious suicide, I consider, because we are disturbing the whole agroecology. In addition, you know, global climate change is favoring the proliferation of many kind of pests, and some of them I will be also talking to you. The three examples that I'm giving, they are all affected by climate change because there is it is triggering the use and abuse of pesticides in many parts of the world, as well as the excessive use of fertilizers. And this is not only killing natural enemies, but also affecting the environment as well as the farmers' health. So you know, the losses from insects during this global warming effect is around 25 to 100%, depending on the crop loss. Like for example, recently you are having 100% crop losses in many parts of the world because of the locust invasions, and also with the fall armyworm invasions, and also many rice pests. They are causing a lot of problems. So it's critical, however, that the production system, including the management of pests, remains sustainable and ecologically sound in the changing climate. So the basis of the ecological sustainable pest management in rice is through ecological engineering. And that relies on the preventive strategies rather than reactive strategies. So I'm going to give you green plant protection approaches for 3 invasive species that I've been working for many years. And one is the ecological engineering of rice plant hoppers. And second one is on the rats, which is a serious problem in Indonesia, as well as in Malaysia and including Vietnam. And the snails, which are a global invasive species. And so we have developed technologies on all these 3 pests, almost reducing the pesticide to almost a 0 level. So what are plant hoppers? You know, most of you are aware, you know, because it has caused serious outbreaks of plant hoppers and white plant hoppers. These are the photos here. And, you know, they are causing millions of dollars in losses to rice sector, basically because of the use of the susceptible hybrid varieties with a high temperature, and also with the high use of fertilizer and a broad spectrum insecticides. So because we are eliminating the natural enemies, we are disturbing the natural balance between the predator and prey. And you are getting now in many parts of the world or many countries that are growing rice, we call them hopper storms. So if you are sitting outside near the light, you will see swarms of these plant hoppers coming in. Whereas if you look on the photo below, this is a typical symptom of a hopper burn, which is very rampant. In fact, in the Philippines, for the last two seasons, we have a serious problems of brown plant hopper, and the Philippine government is now looking at some of the strategies that we developed for a few years back, because this was also my PhD thesis long time in 1988, where I've shown if you use if you abuse the use of insecticides, you are going to cause hopper burn. And until today, the findings still hold good. The second pest that I'm going to deal about is the rice field rats. We had a very big ACIR fund in Indonesia, Vietnam, Philippines, and I was also a part of it. So you know what is the problem of rat? I think rats are one of the major pests of rice, and they are the most difficult to control because they are too smart. So you are expecting pre-post harvest losses to rise from rodents to 5 to 10%. Even if you say only 5%, it approximately, it amounts to around 50 million tons, which is enough to feed 180 million people for 12 months. So you can see the impact of rats. The second thing is that the rats attack all stages of rice, from seedbed to transplanting to maximum tillering to up to the harvest. And even after the harvest, they now enter into storage areas or warehouses near the farmer's field. So we have been developing a lot of technologies on this. The third is of the invasive apple snail. The old name is golden apple snail. And this is because of the increased flooding that is happening in many countries with climate change. They are now distributed very widely, and they are one of the biggest problems because they also carry a parasite which causes a rat lungworm parasite, which actually makes the person almost lethargic and misfit. So some of the losses that are caused, agricultural loss globally is around 55 to 248 billion per year US dollars. And the hazards, as I mentioned to you, it carries a rat lungworm parasite. And of course, the impact of molluscicides, the chemicals, has been very serious. So all my work has focused on how to reduce the problems of excessive use of molluscicides. So ecological engineering is actually a very old term. It was referred in 1962 by Odom. But in simple terms, it's a human activity where we modify the environment according to the ecological principles, where we enhance the resilience and sustainability of farming system. So, some of the SRI principles are also based on this. And, we manipulate habitats, and making them less favorable to pests and more attractive to beneficial organisms. So it reduces the herbicide, the herbivores, that is the organisms that feed on the plants, by providing resources to natural enemies. So there are two things in ecological engineering. One is we restore biodiversity. That means, a lot of this work has now been done in Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, China, Philippines also. We are providing nectar plants on the bunds, and we do crop diversification and increase the diversity of varieties. The second conservation part, for the conservation part, we stop the early application of insecticide for the first 40 days, and we avoid using insecticide that are toxic to bees and Hymenoptera. So the main idea is to improve the species biodiversity, especially for parasitoid predators and decomposers, because decomposers are very important food reserve for many of the natural enemies during the early stage of crop establishment. So, the concept of ecological engineering, or the term, was coined by Jeff Gurr from Australia. And we have been working very closely with him at IRI before. And so there was a multi-country study where they planted rice bunds with flowers and vegetable strips and increased the abundance of parasitoids and predators, which are the principle of the principal rice pest. And of course, there are other techniques that are used, but the basically here is you modify using cultural practices with minimum impact on the beneficial organisms. So that is the key. But this concept is very old. Even my ancestors, even my grandfather, they have been using this in India for many years, especially on other crops. But now it is coming back. So like the use of trap crops, it's well established. So most of the approaches in the ecological engineering are based on the cultural practices, because they have minimum effect on the ecology in the agroecosystems. So these are some of the techniques that I'm showing that they are using on for trap cropping for pest management, so that you can enhance the natural enemies and you reduce the damage from the harmful organisms. This is a very typical example, which is very well established. I think most of you are aware of vetiver grass. This is a grass which is used to restore, landscapes which are susceptible to landslides. And also, this is a very, very important grass. And we have found out very interestingly is that this vetiver grass is actually is a trap plant for the striped stem borer, which is a serious problem. It's a stem borer species on rice. So what happens? The stem borer comes and lays his eggs on this vetiver grass, but the larva feeds on this grass. But what happens is that the larva is unable to survive, because there is certain kind of chemical in this grass that affects the newly emerged larva, and as a result, the neighboring crop, which is rice, has almost minimum damage from stem borers. So this approach is now used in China and also in many countries, and many countries are evaluating this approach. Even in the Philippines, because stem borers are one of the major problems on rice, and farmers have been using a lot of pesticide on this, but they have very little control because they are internal feeders. So the pesticide cannot, in fact, kill the natural enemies and makes the stem borer more problematic. So, in ecological engineering, there are 3 pillars. So first plank is, or the first pillar is, you have moderate insecticide use. So avoid early spraying. The second is you build up on predators, on detritivore prey. That means feeding on organic matter. And third is you enhance the parasite and predators by providing more nectar and shelter. That means you can provide nectar like flowering plants, which I'm going to show you a little later. So the first thing that we have clearly seen and was very well established, if you spray during the early season, that means in the first 40 days after sowing, it has little or no effects on the yield, but they have a big impact on the problem of insect pests, because you are eliminating the beneficial organisms. So such sprays do more harm than good, because we destroy natural enemies and the aquatic detritivore prey fauna, which are important, because like columbullans and others, they are very important prey for the natural enemies. And it has been shown that early sprays significantly decrease the food chain length and disorganize the parasite, the predator-prey relationship. So this is a simple thing that we did in the Philippines. So many farmers, they try to control leaf folders in the early stages. And you'll see when they are trying to control leaf folders, you are getting a 10%, almost tenfold increase in the problem of another insect, which is the brown plant hopper. So because you have eliminated the natural enemies of the leaf folders, and thereby you cause a certain outbreak or resurgence of brown plant hopper. This was on the right hand side is my PhD work, long time back in 1988, and until today, people use this information. So I tried to did this in the field, not in the laboratory. So each field is around 1 hectare fields, and this was my PhD work. And during the first, right after the 7th or 10th day, the farmers usually spray. So in this we have shown that when you spray, whether it's a resistant variety or whether it is a susceptible variety, you are going to create a population like this, a hopper bun, around 35 days after the first spray. So, 35 days or around 40 days, you will see a flare up of the brown plant hopper in the sprayed field. So this graph clearly shows that if you disturb the natural ecosystem, if you disturb the biodiversity of the beneficial organism, you are actually creating. That's why we say the brown plant hopper is a man-made pest, because you are creating a minor problem, and now it becomes a major problem because of the misuse of pesticides. So now currently in many countries, whether even Japan has studied very extensively, they get a lot of migration of hoppers. They have also observed that the early applications have caused really problems of resistance, even resistance to insecticide. So this is one of the work that my research has shown, that irrespective of a resistant variety or susceptible variety, you are going to break down the resistance of the variety if the farmers spray early in the season. So, now many farmers, they understand. And now, very little farmers in the Philippines I have seen, they don't use the early application now, because they understand that even if there are leaf holders in the early stage, they do not cause yield loss for the first 40 days if you don't spray it. They will not cause. They will only cause a problem if it becomes a problem during the flag leaf stage. But if you avoid spraying early for the first 40 days, you will not even have a problem of leaf folders, because by the time the natural enemies have gone to very high numbers. The second one is the enhancement of the natural enemy predator buildup on retrieval space. We call them the Chinese scientists. They call they are very abundant on the paddy water. And there's a classical work done by Bill Settle in Indonesia from FAO. He was based there, and he found out that these retrivores, they are neutral insects. What do you mean they're neutral insect? The Chinese call them neutral insect, but in fact these are not neutral, because they do not cause any damage, but at the same time they provide the alternative prey to the predators while the land is still being prepared. So they feed on organic matter, and when they are important prey for many spiders as well as other predators. So, at the early crop stages, these neutral insects are very important. These detrivores are very important, because the insecticide spray at this period of crop, however, are detrimental to these aquatic detrivores. So in Erie Farm, we have seen when insecticide use decreased by 95%, the aquatic detrivore species diversity increased by 5-folds. And that was really a very remarkable findings, because we could see that we could reduce the damage of brown plant hoppers even in the farmer's field if we did not spray it in the early stages. So this is a simple, I think many of you are very familiar with this. This is an aquatic habitat. So you have detritivores and other litter feeding detritus. And then they provide an important food for the predators and also parasitoids. And so in the crop habitat, you have the pest, you have the rice crop, you have the predators, parasitoids. And then in the non-rice habitat, many people have studied, or they only study problems on rice in the rice field, but they don't look outside the rice field. So during my postdoctoral fellowship program at IRI, under the UNEP program, I studied at what's happening in the non-rice areas. So I looked at, so that I found out there was a lot of movement of the parasites and predators from the rice to non-rice, and depending on the activity that is happening in the field. So this is a very important work. So I think many countries should look at what is happening in non-rice habitats that influence the pest problems on rice. So so when there is no rice, what are these herbivores or parasitoids or natural enemies doing in the non-rice habitats? I think that's very important finding, because then you can minimize the problem while you are planting the main crop. The third one is, the third important pillar is you enhance the natural enemies by habitat manipulation. For example, one of the ways is nectar plants on the bunches. And so a lot of work has been done on this, but there are certain limitations to this work, but we are looking at other options on how, instead of flowering plants, maybe we are also trying a lot of leguminous plants that provides also food and nutrition security. This is a typical field in China, where you can see they have a lot of flowering plants along the edge of the fields. And China is one of the countries now, is very important now for the farmers. The farmers who do the ecological engineering, like planting these flowers, they get a subsidy. So they are promoting this. It's a government policy. Farmers who will do this, they will get more benefits in terms of subsidy. So, and other benefits for them. So, many of in China, in fact, the ecological engineering is the most widely used compared to the other parts. Maybe the next one is in Indonesia, or maybe it is in Vietnam. So, my former boss, Dr. K.L. Yong, introduced ecological engineering. We tested for the first time in rice in 2008. And this is to avoid the outbreak of secondary pests, like, the brown plant hoppers and leaf folders. Because we consider them as secondary pests, because it is because of our actions that these pests are becoming serious. So this is a typical example of a trap crop that is growing on the side. And then you have another sesame, which is a flowering, providing nectar for the beneficial organism. And then, of course, the other kind of plants. So this is I just want to show you a very simple thing. Like in China, they have experienced that the egg parasitism in the plants that were, where they have used sesame, the egg parasitism of hoppers increased 43% in fields that had flowers, and the hoppers decreased by 30%, populations of hopper. So the role of providing nectar plants is very important in terms of ecological engineering. This is just examples of ecological engineering and these are some of the flowering plants or ornamental plants that are widely used in some countries. But for Asia, I think we should more focus on plants that are like cowpea, which provides a lot of protein, as well as mustard, which is very widely grown in many countries. for oil production, French beans, which is also a very important vegetable crop in many countries. So we should look at other options instead of just ornamental flowering plants. This is an example I showed you about the push and pull technology, which I mentioned to you before, is the vertical grass on the rice bed for controlling rice stem borers in China. And also now this technique is being used in other countries as well. So this multi-country project was in Bangladesh, Philippines, and Vietnam, Thailand, and India. And we have seen most of the time it has got a lot of positive impacts. This is a typical example of ecological engineering in Indonesia, in Java. And my friend Mr. Jatika has done a lot of work in Indonesia, because he is also one of the key person on SRI that he has been working on. And currently he is also doing a lot of work on organic. And I think Dr. Fabry has met in one of the meetings we were together. This is on the right-hand side is a typical example of the nationwide promotion in the Philippines of ecological engineering, not only to the farmers, but also to the women group and those who are into floriculture. The second aspect that I'm going to talk about, the first one was of the brown plant hopper, where we were able to reduce the use of early application of pesticides, so that we can completely have a good ecological balance. The second is about this, we developed the ecology-based rice management, rat management system in field rice. And this is now even ED has appreciated this, because, in the past, we used to rely a lot on using rat poisons. We were spending around 3.5 million pesos in Philippine Rice Research Institute, which is around 100 hectares. And when I joined the institute in the early around 2005, I looked at the rat management options. So what they were used to do, they had a reactive approach. So what they used to do is, when there is a rat problem, even before the rat becomes a problem, right after the planting of rice, they'll start putting the poison around the field as a bait. And then when the rats come in and they start damaging the crop, then they start using more and more chronic and sustained poison, very acute poisons. So, I looked at it very carefully, because I wanted to develop a ecologically sustainable rat management system, which is proactive. And you will, a while ago, you will see the kind of impacts that we have made. And this is also, we have published a book on the Philippine rats. And this there's a chapter on this book. And the ERI was the one joined us. We are from a Philippine Rice Research, which is a national organization. But ERI got so interested that they wanted to be one of the editors in our book. So what we did, we had a very simple approach. We digitized the whole field rice. This is the whole field rice farm, which is around 100 hectares. We digitized that, and we looked at where are the active burrows, where are the excavated burrows, and where are the inactive burrows. So we have a technique how we can know them, whether they are active. So from this, we are able to know the areas where you see more of the rat. That means those are the places where the rats are breeding, or the rats are concentrated. So from there, they start moving to areas where you don't see many rat. So we were able to map the area. So the first thing we did is identify active rat burrows, and then we established the rat trap barrier system and a trap crop. That means before planting the whole area, there were certain areas where where the rat breeding was very high. We set up, trap crop, because we wanted them to come in our trap crop, where because of the smell, they will be attracted, because there is no rice around even in the farmer's field. So we are the first people to plant small areas of trap crops. And these are some of the areas that we have shown where we have put these trap crops. They are mostly found near fish ponds, or they are found near banana plantation. Those are the areas where the rats are actively breeding. So the second step we did is we understand the biology, the rat breeding activity. How do they breed when the populations get high and low during in the cropping period. So you can see during the land preparation, this is the time when the rat population is slowly coming in because the surrounding crops are coming in. So you try to trap rats in the trap barrier system, which is a very unique system that we have developed. And then they start going again up uh, at the stubbles, and then again going down, and then again up. So it has got a cycle. So we exactly know the proportion of male and female. So so try to control the rats and when the populations are at a lower level. Don't try to control. So that's why the use of trap crop is very important, because that is the time when the rats are getting active. And so before you transplant your rice, the rats are already, populations has crashed down because they are not able to reproduce because they are already caught in the trap crop. Then we also develop, the third thing is the mapping of the hotspot, as I mentioned before, where rots were cropped during all. And then we use different techniques, all non-chemical approaches. We use also sanitation, community development, trap barrier system, night hunting activities. So these are all the techniques. I won't be able to explain you in detail at this point, but this is available in my book, which is published by the Philippine government as well as by ERI together. And here we are showing, only the areas we were able to digitize and show the rat damage during the dry season when the rats are more serious. And you can see only in this area, which is very near to the fish pond, you are now seeing the rats. Some of the fields are heavily damaged, but the rest is all less than 1.1 to 5% damage, or even 0 to 1. So most of them is a minimal damage. And you will be surprised to know the kind of impacts that we have shown is here. We have only developed non-chemical options, and and not only reduce the damage to the experimental plots, but also more economical than chemical control. That's number one. So even though it is we have a lot of activities, but even then the cost is very, very low aside from the safety. And then what we have seen, one of the biggest impact that we have seen, and now in all the field rice stations in the Philippines, now they have to follow the trap barrier system and our management system. And we were able to reduce the rodenticide use 83% of chronic and 94% reduction in acute rodenticide. That is a huge saving to the institute, and but at the same time, it is a huge saving also for the farmers, and also the impacts on the environment. So the rat management options that we have developed, and this is a book that is published by ERI, and also some of the CDs that we have developed. This is a trap barrier you can see on the top. You see this is much older than the surrounding crop. So this was almost now nearing to maximum teethering, where the rice here is just newly transplanted. So all the rats, they have been caught here. There is a special kind of trap in each of these. So every morning you can see a lot of rats already inside the a trap, which is a metal trap inside. There is a metal trap. So we have also designed some approaches. The third important thing invasive pests that we have been working for so many years, and in fact, any part of the world where the invasive apple snails have invaded, I have always been invited to provide solutions to how to manage it without a single application of any molluscicide. So this is the old technique that was developed by FAO, and this technique is not farmers are not doing it. They are not using this old management option because they are very labor intensive. They are not economical. They are non-sustainable, and they are harmful to the environment. One of the beauty in our new scheme. This is a new management option. So we developed the concept from SRI. Raise stronger seedlings. It doesn't mean that you have to use older seedling to control snails. No. The important thing is that when I say stronger seedlings, there should be around three leaves, and at the same time, the seedling should look light yellow, not dark green. And secondly, when it is light yellow in color and with the long roots and the leaves are erect, the snail will not be able to eat them. Even if you use, the standard recommendation is of using 21 days old seedling. But I've shown in Haiti and also in other countries that even if you use a 14 days old seedling or 10 days old seedling, you will not get a snail damage. Because here what we have developed is based on SRI principles also, that we are using also a technique called alternate drying and wetting approach. And what happens especially on a transplanted rice, we have shown that if you have a well level field, and of course it is impossible to have a well level field, so only on those water pockets we put old newspapers as an attractant. This was also one of our discovery. Or you can use vegetable waste or rotten fruits and vegetables, or any plant material that is decaying. You can easily collect the snails before transplanting rice. So after transplanting rice, this is another very important concept. You don't have to flood your fields with rice. Again, the SRI principle works here. Maintain a shallow depth of water, or do alternate drying and wetting. Because what happens when the depth of the water is shallow, the snails cannot move. They will bury inside the soil. So they are not going to damage your seedling. So if your seedling is around 14 days old seedling, and after 2 weeks, the snail cannot damage anymore. So you maintain a shallow depth of water or use alternate drying and method. And one of the things that I recently saw when I was in Haiti last 2 years back, what I have seen is that those farmers that were practicing SRI, they did not have a problem of snail. Actually, I was invited to Haiti to manage snails. So I seen in big irrigation projects where the government is using a lot of chemicals to control the snail. The snails were becoming more problematic. But when I look at SRI, farmers that are practicing SRI, there the snails, you can see dead snails with empty shells in the farmer's field. And the farmers were saying it's not a problem because they do alternate drying and wetting. Shallow depth of water, alternate drying and method is the key to manage snails. Like in Korea, organic farmers do not kill snails because they see the value of snails in terms of weed control in rice. And this was one of the papers that I presented in IFOM, the International Federation for Organic Movement in Australia, in Adelaide. And many people were surprised because everybody say it's an invasive species. Yes, it's an invasive species if you do not know how to manage it properly. But if you manage it using the agroecological principle or the techniques that I've simply shown and it works, it's easy to do. They are effective, they are economical, sustainable, and environment friendly. And not only that, they are also safe from to the farmer's health. Because when the snails invaded first time in 1987, when I started working in the Philippines on this snail in 1987, since 1987, the farmers were losing their nails and the animals were losing their hoe because of the toxic chemicals, organotin compounds, which are now completely banned. So these are some of the knowledge tools that we have developed. These are some of the And we have country reports from different countries. Indonesia, you can see on the left-hand side, Indonesia, from Vietnam, from Malaysia, from Myanmar, from Cambodia. So we have done a good job now that we would like to introduce this SRI principles in other countries to manage snails, especially in the transplanted rice. However, this approach cannot yet be used on direct seeded rice. So these are some of the impacts. So we have few challenges that we have to address. How to manage snails in direct seeded rice, that is one of the biggest problems. How to do on flood prone areas. So these are some of the areas that I am currently working on. And then there is an increase in the snail vector diseases because of the rat lungworm parasites in many countries, because of the increased flooding, because of the climatic changes, heavy rainfall. This is triggering a lot of spread of this parasite together with the snail, and how to prevent or manage future invasion due to climate change. That is, so the snails are a perfect storm. This is the parasite. It's a nematode that goes inside the spinal cord of the human being. So I've got very few take home messages. I think what's in the future, the role of agroecology in invasive species management is a crucial thing, and it's a powerful strategy for sustainable pest management in rice production systems. And secondly, the ecological management, it offers great opportunities to reduce crop losses to insects and non-insects while reducing the use of pesticides and providing a suitable habitat and restore biodiversity and ecosystem services. Now, this kind of work needs a lot of partnership and collaboration. I don't think one single country can address the problem. So that's why we need a regional, national, and international cooperation, not only within the agriculture sector, but also with other sectors and other stakeholders, university or research stations, and even with the non-state actors to manage invasive species using ecological approaches. This is a simple example I'm going to show you. I've been working on snails, as I told you, since 1987 until today. And you can look at the kind of collaboration I have around the world. So, recently now I'm focusing in these three countries, because these three countries have, there are new invasions in Africa. Just last May, the snail has been invaded in Kenya for the first time. And so there is a big threat. And we are currently preparing a lot of IEC material. I have just included also the component of how SRI can contribute in terms of managing the snails in Kenya. Haiti, I'm a USAID consultant there, so I used to go there very often. This year I wasn't able to go. And then Spain with NeuroRice and also with DataMed. I'm a consultant on managing the invasive apple snake. But you'll be surprised to know that from Indonesia, so many well-known researchers who have been working on snail for a long time, I'm collaborating with them, and they are collaborating with me, even in Malaysia. So we are planning to prepare a global proposal where we want different countries to come up, because we have come out already with country reports. Now we want to prepare a good concept note for funding by the UN or some other agency that would be interested. Because, the invasive species, dealing with invasive species, there's a lot of money because it is one of the UN sustainable goals. So, I always say that it doesn't matter where you work, whether you work with the National Institute or International Institute or with university. We have to think globally, but we have to act local. And I think, SRI provides a lot of opportunities for us to improve. Now most of the food has to be produced safer, because safe food, and also more on focused on agroecological principles. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and I'm happy to answer if there are any questions. And if or any of you are interested, what I'll do, I will send my presentation, the PDF presentation, to Fabry or to Dr. Elisa, and you are most welcome to have a copy of it.
Thank you, Dr. Josie, for your wonderful insight. Now, time for question for the panel. I think we have some question on the chat.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, we have a question from Dr. Norida Mazlan. In Malaysia, we have 2 planting season. Can you give suggestion what can be done during the resting time in between 2 seasons to reduce pest population for coming season?
Yeah. You know, even in the Philippines, we have certain areas, we have 3 cropping per year. And I think it's very important. I think we are teaching a lot of farmers that don't grow rice after rice after rice. So grow rice, then grow a non-rice crop in between, and then go for rice. That's very important because we have to break the cycles of the pest. Otherwise, they'll continuously multiply, and then you'll have more problems. So not only, for example, rats, they will become very serious problem if you have crop after us. Same thing with snails, same thing with hoppers, same thing with insect pests. So I think one of the basic principle is really to reduce, to give a break between the 2 cropping cycles, have an on rice crop. And you know, again, in terms of seasonal dynamics, it's very location specific. And also at the same time, usually, like in the Philippines, you have more problems during the dry season for certain kind of pest, but you have more problem of in the wet season for certain kind of pests like snails. You have more problem of snails during the wet season than in the dry season, in the dry season crop. So it is going to be location specific recommendations. It can't be, you know, one size fit all recommendation. So it will depend even within Malaysia. It will depend from area to area, depending on the ecosystems. Yeah.
All right. Okay, we have another question. It's not question, it's statement. Maybe Dr. Josie can comment on this. We have a statement from Pitri Amir. This hopper has been immune to pesticide in northern Malaysia. Hopper, big problem to farmers last year. Can you give your opinion about that?
Yes. You know, as I told you, the more you spray, and the more you spray with one kind of chemical, the hopper has already developed resistance. They have already developed resistance in many countries. And now that is why we have to reduce the first 40-day application. So if you are able to hold it for the first 40 days, then you will have less problem of even getting a hopper outbreak, whether it is a resistant variety or whether it is a susceptible variety. So I still believe that, you know, how the management, insecticide is not a solution for plant hopper management. It's not. Only in terms of an outbreak. If an outbreak happens in the early stage of the rice planting season, at the nursery bed, for example, the rice season started and now you have a hopper migration coming in. At that time, you have to use a pesticide which doesn't affect the natural enemies. And that particular pesticide is available in most of the countries now. It is a growth regulator. It is not toxic to natural enemies. But you know, those kind of situations are very rare. but if you manage it for the first 40 days, hold your sprays, you will have less problems of hopper at the later stages. And this has been proved, there are not only in the Philippines, but in most part of the world where the plant hoppers are causing, and especially with climate change, we are having more, they are transboundary pests. They are moving from one continent to another. So we have to be, that's why the early warning system is very important for managing hoppers.
We have a question from, from Mr. Yu Pong. Okay,
Yeah.
this is very interesting. What do you do with the rats that are caught in the traps?
Okay, this is very interesting because, in the Philippines, the people eat rats.
Wow.
People eat rats. Yeah. In the Philippines, people eat rats, but not in my country, not in India. We cannot do that. And also, if you look in Vietnam, you go to Vietnam market, you will see rat meat is sold like chicken meat, and it is even more expensive than the chicken. So the rats in the Philippines, usually now, I have seen, because of this trap barrier system, because they know that the rats are not poisoned. Now, most of the laborers in the morning, the farm workers, they just go and they even steal the rats from our cages because they will eat them. So it's very common now in the Philippines. Now people were scared to eat rats before because they know they had chronic poisons was placed. But now they know those that have come, they are not being treated. Even neighboring farmers feel they are not using rat baits anymore.
I see, because rats now is organic.
Yeah, and they are safe because now they know.
Safe.
Actually, actually, I tell you, the rats are they are very clean. Actually, in fact, if you look at, but not the rats that are found in the urban areas. The rats that are found in the rice fields, they are very clean because they mostly eat only rice, and also they eat the snails in the rice fields. They are important predators on snails.
All right. Okay, Dr. Joshi, we have another question. I think it's about disease. Maybe you have experience before about this.
Yeah.
From Dr. Norida Mazlan, one of invasive disease in Malaysia is now bacterial panicle blight. Is there any countries? Yeah, BPV, bacterial panicle blight.
Oh, panicle blight.
Oh, yeah, panicle. Yeah. So is there any other countries in Asia that you know that have this disease? And
to my knowledge, I'm sorry, to my knowledge, I'm not aware of it. I'm very much interested. I am very much interested to know about it. I am very much interested. That means this is something that I have not heard. This is, you are telling about bacterial panicle blight.
Yeah, it's a bacterial disease in rice.
I have not heard about it. I'm going to ask our plant pathologist. I'm going to ask, because even at ERI, I haven't heard about it. This is interesting.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
All right. Okay, we have another question from Muhammad Saipul. Just wondering, what is the difference between ecological engineering approach and IPM?
Yes. In IPM, we are saying the last resort is using chemical approach. Okay. And IPM actually has evolved now to a more of using the principles of agroecology. So even the FAO program, when they talk about IPM, they are using the ecological principles. So ecological engineering is just a big name, but the main thing there is we are focusing more on the cultural control as to enhance biodiversity of beneficial organisms. And also, so for example, you reduce the shallow depth of water. That's also ecological engineering, because you are managing the habitats. You are manipulating the habitat so that the snails do not become a problem. Now, say for example, reduce the size of the bunds in rice fields between two bunds is also an ecological approach, because there you are minimizing the rat breeding along the bunds. So, I think we have to, many of the students in the university still do not understand much about IPM, because they think IPM is no pesticide. They think. But I think when we go from the agroecological point of view, I think then they will have a better understanding of the agroecology and agroecosystems. I think this is what we need to give more knowledge to the student. Like currently I teach IPM course, but I emphasize to them about a lot about the agroecological principles.
All right. Okay, we have another question from Mr. Yupong. One method to control snail is to use hard stem rice species, which has yellow stem. Is there variety easily? Is this variety easily available? You mentioned about green stem of rice. Snail like to eat it. Is it how to make it yellow and more hardly to prevent snails to eat?
What I was mentioning to is when you prepare the nursery, the rice seedlings, don't try to put the rice seedlings under the submergence, like you put a lot of water. No,
yes.
You just keep the soil surface moist, because we want the strong roots, because when we are going to transplant it, the plant should be able to be less stressed. So what happens when you reduce the quantity of standing water and just keep the soil in the seed bed moist, it produces a larger root system, but at the same time the plant is not getting succulent, it's not getting soft, the leaves are not drooping, the leaves are erect, and the color of the leaf is light yellowish green in color. So as a result, those kind of leaves are hard, they are not succulent. But if you put too much water and your seed beds are always flooded with water, your leaves will be drooping, and those are the snails that will eat. It doesn't need a special variety, any rice variety, but you do this, you will see a big difference. You'll see a big difference on snail damage.
Yes, that's right. We have done the same things for SRI.
Yeah.
So actually, we use a little water, so that the snail cannot attack the rice.
So this is how I developed the technique. I thought, why don't I try the SRI method of raising the seedlings, seed bed in the seed bed, and see what happens to the snail. So the snails are not even damaging anything in the nursery bed, because there is no standing water.
Yep, that's right.
And the leaves are not drooping, they are erect. That means the plant is strong. It doesn't mean the plant is strong when it is too green in color. It has to be light. Yeah. I even use a very simple way. I use a leaf color chart to show farmers, if the leaf color chart reading is 3, that is light yellowish green, that is your good seedling. That is the seedling you should transplant. Even if you use a younger seedlings of that kind, you will have no snail damage. And we have demonstrated it not in small micro plots. We have done it in big fields. We've shown it to the farmers. Now they believe. So I think that is a very important application of SRI there.
Yeah, that's right. Is there any more question to Dr. Joshi? You can ask question directly by turning on your mic.
I have a question, Dr. Joshi. This
Okay,
is
Dr. Eddie.
Yeah, regarding vetiver. Yeah, I'm not familiar with this plant. So it's a type of grass. So would you consider it invasive? Would it, compete with other plants? Is it like grass and easy to cross-pollinate with others and this kind of thing? So this is my question.
Recently I organized an international webinar on vetiver technology. And I will send you a booklet that the Central Bicol State University of Agriculture, I help them with the vetiver experts around the world, where they reviewed the booklet and it is available. I'll send to answer your question very briefly, this is a very important grass that is, the beauty of this is it doesn't spread, it doesn't become weedy, because most of the flowers, they are sterile. They are sterile. They will not become invasive. They will not become invasive. The second beauty is that it has a very long root system, very strong long root system. And third is it has also a lot of beneficial effects in land restoration, especially in mining areas. And because it also takes a lot of, it's toxins from the soil. So it rejuvenates the soil. If I send you that booklet, I can send you that booklet. You can send me an email to me, or I can send it to Fabry. I think this is also now used in many countries. Yeah, and there is an international vetiver network. There's an international network, and you can join for it for free. And we will have a second international webinar on vetiver very soon, and we'll invite you on that, because I think now vetiver is even recommended by the World Bank for restoration of degraded areas, mining areas, and also in terms of, it's also used as a fodder for animals as well. And also it improves a lot, it addresses a lot of UN sustainable goals in terms of, it also purifies the water. It has got some purification properties also. So I'll send you that booklet. It's a very simple booklet. It will give you an idea about whatever. And now we are trying to use this technology on how we can use it for pest management. So one of the things that we have seen, it is very good in terms of attracting stem borers. But now we also want to try for using on the fall armyworm, which is becoming a very serious problem in many countries.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Joshi.
Yeah.
February, you are mute.
Sorry. Okay, we have a question on the chat box. So when we harvest the rice, do we remove away the vetiver grass or grow new vetivers next season?
No need to remove. They can grow by itself. They can grow by itself. You only grow it on the side of the banks, not in the middle of the field. No need. Just grow on the side. It's a very prolific. It's like lemongrass. You don't have to remove it. And from one tiller, you can plant how many plants already. So it's very versatile.
Very versatile plants.
So will it
I'll
not
send you.
interfere with uncontrolled growing, and later, I don't know, then farmers probably will tend to use weed killer, or if it growing.
No, because
Yeah.
many of the farmers, like now in the Philippines and also in other countries, many of the farmers are using for economic activities. They are even making handicrafts from it. They are making hats, they are making bags, they are making a lot of money from this.
Okay.
All right.
I think if I send you that booklet, you will see it's very simple booklet for anybody can understand. I'll
Okay.
send you a copy. I'll send it to Fabry, and Fabry can send it to everybody in the network. I
Yes, I
think
can distribute to the streamers
yeah.
members.
Thank you.
So
Sure.
is there any more question to Dr. Josie? We still have time. All right. If not, thank you, Dr. Josie, for your wonderful presentation. And it's being a pleasure being with all of you today. Thank you very much. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel or follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook for latest information about our webinar and our activities and other activities. I'm Febri Doni. Thank you so much for watching us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Josie.
Thank you very much.
Can we have a short group photo session?
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
Okay, everyone. Can you turn on your camera? Okay. Anyone else? Okay, everyone, smile. 1, 2, 3. Freestyle. 1, 2, 3. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Febri. Thank you.
Have a nice weekend, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Josie.
Enjoy
Thank
your
you so
weekend.
much.
Bye.
Thank you. And I'll
Please
send
stay
you.
safe.
I'll send you the